Charli XCX has never been one to play it safe. After a decade of crafting her own niche sound, she's finally getting the recognition that she deserves, becoming the most awarded artist of the year. From her early days as an underground artist to now being one of the most innovative voices in contemporary music, Charli's sonic identity in music has always been about pushing boundaries. In particular, her latest album BRAT, of which we all know about by now, is a great album that perfectly fuses hyperpop, UK rave culture, and techno. But what's actually the secret formula behind the BRAT sound? What's in the production? More importantly, what exactly is it about the instrumental composition and the production that makes it so special? In this video, I'm going to break down all of those, from the composition to the sound design to the instrumental and arrangement techniques, everything that defines Charli's latest musical era. I feel like one of the most interesting aspects of BRAT when I first listened to it was just the simplicity and minimalistic approach that the producers took to it. Some of those producers being people like A.G. Cook, Easy Fun, George Daniel, all insane producers. But the way they take to the album and the way they take to the instrumental composition is like a very minimal approach, and they sort of embrace a less is more philosophy, which I think is such a great philosophy, you know, stripping down tracks to the most essential but most minimalistic elements, but still at the same time they're so effective and they sort of maximize their rhythmic and melodic impact. So what I've got here is an Ableton session where I've made a track in the style of Charli XCX's BRAT album. I'm taking a bunch of influence from a lot of the songs on there, and I'm going to walk through each of the sounds that I've used, go through the sound design, and let you know my creative processes. So first of all, I'll give it a small play. I won't play the whole thing because I'll play the whole thing at the end once we've covered everything. But just to see what it sounds like, I'll give it a little listen. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about first with this is sort of the simplicity in the melodies and the chords and whatnot, because essentially there's not really much going on in terms of MIDI and notation. It's all just about the sound design, the sound selection, and basically making a cohesive whole out of just a couple of elements. So basically I'll walk you through the MIDI here of the Simplant patch that I've got. So this Simplant patch is called BRAT Heavy Bass. This is one that I made in Simplant 2. I basically put in some 808 preset sounds into this Geno patch here, and what it did was it loaded some reference sounds. And then after choosing one, I went to here, then I tweaked all of these envelopes like the LFO. Then I went into the oscillators, I tweaked this noise filter, and it was until I got this knocky singular sound. So yeah, this knob here is especially important, I found, because this is a frequency modulation amount. So I found that the more frequency modulation, the more it started to sound like Charli XCX's music, because I feel like there's a lot of modulation going on in the sound design, where essentially this oscillator is modulating this oscillator up here, and that's what gives it that knocky but hyper poppy Charli XCX sound, I guess. Also going through filtering and effects, there's a lot of saturation going on. See if I turn the saturation knob down. It's really playing a role in the entire sound. It's really making it gritty, and that's kind of what I wanted for this sound. So this sound by itself, the Simplant patch, was pretty cool, but I feel like by itself it wasn't quite enough to support, you know, a whole bass sound. So I added the Serum bass underneath. Which is a pretty fundamental sound of most EDM pop songs. All it is just a saw wave, or a couple of saw waves, going through this MG Low 24 filter, being controlled by this envelope, which is linked to the cutoff. And that way, that gives it that plucky envelope sound. And one thing to note is this relatively quick decay here at 444 milliseconds. This is what I thought was the perfect amount of decay for this filter to do its work to make it sound plucky. I've also got a multi-band compressor going on with this hyper dimension, a bit of reverb, and yeah, I've layered that with the other bass. So yeah, after adding those two together, I thought that was a pretty good basis for a full track. All I needed now was just a few more sounds and definitely, most importantly, some drums. So for the introduction, I added this clap in. So yeah, I felt like this clap was pretty important because this is a pretty signature clap in quite a few of Charli XCX's songs, you know, when it's that 4 on the floor clap going on, especially in a song like Sympathy is a Knife. That intro clap, which is pretty similar to this one actually, it's very white noisy and just gives that oomph, I guess, for the drums that I wanted. So yeah, the other thing that I added for the intro was this little saw lead. It's pretty simple. All it is just this B flat playing along to this rhythm. All it is just a saw wave with a short decay on it, and it's making that plucky sound that you'd hear in Charli's song like 360. The very beginning of that album, there's that little saw synth in the background of sort of the verses. This lead was actually quite inspired by that one. So the next thing I added was this other Serum bass underneath in the build up to the drop. So all it is just following the same MIDI as all the other basses, but instead it's just taking up more of that low end to give a wider sound. So yeah, all it is a sine wave alongside the square wave running through an MG Low 24 low pass filter. And then in the effects section, all I've got is this diode 1 distortion with a little bit of drive, the mix all the way down at 16%, a little bit of hyper dimension to make the sound a little bit wider, and yeah, a little bit of EQ to take out the mids and the lower mids, just so it really nicely fits underneath all the other basses that are going on. So yeah, now in this little build up section, I added some difference to the drums. I added this kick and this hi-hat, so we'll have a listen. So all this is just a pretty deep punchy kick. I didn't want any top end of the kick, I just wanted a low subby layer, and that's what I got from this kick. I thought that it served that purpose quite well. And for the hi-hats, they're pretty quiet, but they're still going on in the background. They're just like a sizzling 16th note pattern. Yeah, I thought it was quite nice in the background, sort of going along, driving some rhythm for the build-up. We're on to the drop section now. I want to talk about the bass sound design again. So essentially I'm using a couple of the same basses, but there's a new bass added in that I want to go over. So this new bass is this other Serum patch that I've made. It's actually the saw wave with the 16 voice unison, the detune lowered slightly to 0.20, but what really makes this sound special is all the effects on it. So essentially what I've got is this envelope 2 tied to the cutoff of this MG Low 18 filter, and basically what that's doing is it's making this plucky envelopey sound like we did in the last bass with the saw waves, but this time it's spread out. It's a nice wide bass instead of a fundamental layer. And by itself, it doesn't really sound that good. You know, it's pretty weak, and I wouldn't use it on its own. But once you pair it with a couple of the other basses going on, it adds a nice width and depth to the rest of the bass. So it's mainly just a supporting layer, which I think is such a staple of Charli XCX's music, especially in BRAT, especially back to back in particular, or B2B. The gripping part of that song is just that FM bass that hooks you in from the start. So I feel like in this track, I want to sort of emulate that in a way, making just the basses the main element. So after I added this bass, I paired it with a couple of the other current basses that we've already had. So alongside this, I pair this with a couple of the other basses, such as the saw wave bass that we had from earlier. and the sim plump bass. So now if we add them all together, then it'll sound like this. So yeah, the last thing about this drop was this little melodic layer that I had on top. All it is a saw wave and this basic MG oscillator going through a massive reverb, some chorus in there, some hyper dimension. All it's playing is this A sharp or B flat and the C sharp. All I wanted this to be was just this little thing going on in the background, just to add some high ends, because I feel like Charli's vocal would be the one in the middle that would be the main focus. So yeah, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the instrumental composition and basically what's going on with the MIDI, what's going on with the chords and the melodies, the notes, etc. So essentially in this track I don't actually have chords going on in terms of voicings and everything. There are just root notes going on. So in this case I think I'm in C sharp major. So this starts on the A sharp, then goes up to the C sharp, then back to the, this would be an E sharp since we're in C sharp major. This wouldn't be an F natural. This would be an E sharp, so it is in function plays as an F, but since we're in C sharp major, it's actually an E sharp. And then it goes back up to the F sharp to fit in the key. So essentially what we're doing is we're playing the bass line with the root of the key, which is the C sharp, and then we're moving up to the fourth of the chord, which is the F sharp. So it's playing in between these two chords, and it's a pretty popular progression, you know, the 1-4 progression, but it works really well and it's guaranteed to get some great results. And especially adding in these other notes like this F back up to this F sharp, you get some really cool progressions, and that 1-4 progression is nice to work around. So moving on to the chorus section, I've got this. The chord progression changes slightly, not too different to the original though. We've got the fourth on that F sharp, and then we've got it going up to this G sharp for a little bit, and then back up to the A sharp. So this is just going 4, 5, 6 progression, and then back up to the 1 as a final little toucher at the end. So yeah, pretty common chord progression again, nothing too fancy, but since it's so simple, it works so well, and A.G. Cook and George Daniel really knew what they were doing in terms of simplicity, keeping it stripped back, and nothing too fancy harmony-wise, which I think is a staple and a fundamental part of Charli XCX's music, especially in the BRAT album.
Okay, here we go. When I'm in the club, yeah, I'm loving that. When I'm at the house, yeah, I'm loving that. 365 party girl. Should we do a little key? Should we have a little line? Wanna go real wild when I'm loving that. Meet me in the bathroom with you. 365 party girl. French manicure, wipe away the residue. Push my hair back, look hot when I'm loving that. No, I really don't stop when I'm loving that. Gonna jump when it drops when I'm loving that. Down 999, it's a good time. Who the fuck are you? I'm the brat when I'm loving that. Now I wanna hit the track, are you loving that? Till the windows crack, I'll be loving that. No, I'll never go home, don't sleep, don't eat, just do it on repeat, keep. When I'm in the club, yeah, I'm loving that. 365 party girl. Should we do a little key? Should we have a little line? Wanna go real wild when I'm loving that. Meet me in the bathroom with you. 365 party girl. French manicure, wipe away the residue. Okay. Here we go. When I'm in the club, yeah, I'm loving that. When I'm at the house, yeah, I'm loving that. 365 party girl. Should we do a little key? Should we have a little line? Wanna go real wild when I'm loving that. Meet me in the bathroom with you. 365 party girl. French manicure, wipe away the residue. Push my hair back, look hot when I'm loving that. No, I really don't stop when I'm loving that. Gonna jump when it drops when I'm loving that. Down 999.